Age of Heroes Game of Thrones prequel series, when is the Age of Heroes? There are currently 4 Game of Thrones spin-offs in the works after author George R.R. Martin revealed that one of the potential series had been scrapped. Martin also revealed that one of the dramas from the world of A Song of Ice and Fire had got the green light for a pilot from HBO but had yet to get a full season order from the American network. Writing on his Not a Blog site, Martin shared details about the forthcoming prequel, which will see kick-ass screenwriter Jane Goldman serving as showrunner. The acclaimed author explained, "Yes, this is a prequel, not a sequel. None of the characters or actors from Game of Thrones will appear in the new show. All of the successor shows we've been developing have been prequels, as I have mentioned before. Game of Thrones prequel series release date. This one really puts the PR in prequel, since it is set not 90 years before Game of Thrones, like Dunk and Egg, or a few hundred years, but rather 10,000 years, well, assuming the oral histories of the first men are accurate, but there are maesters at the Citadel who insist it has only been half that long. We're very early in the process, of course, with the pilot order just in, so we don't have a director yet, or a cast, or a location, or even a title. My vote would be The Long Night, which says it all, but I'd be surprised if that's where we end up. More likely HBO will want to work the phrase Game of Thrones in there somewhere. We'll know sooner or later." Goldman has already penned the script for the pilot episode, which is likely to be going into production at some point in the not-too-distant future, with casting calls going out and director appointed. Fans have been speculating that the period Martin was referring to was the Age of Heroes. But when is it in the Game of Thrones timeline, and what is it? When will Game of Thrones Season 8 be released? When is the Age of Heroes in Game of Thrones? The Age of Heroes was 10,000 years before the current events in Game of Thrones history and began with the sealing of the pact between the Children of the Forest and the First Men. The pact brought to an end the wars between the two races, which had lasted around 2,000 years. Age of Heroes gets its name from figures who are said to have lived at this time, including Bran the Build and Lann the Clever, the respective ancestors of Houses Stark and Lannister. Other notable figures from this period include Artizoran, who is known as the Falcon Knight, the Grey King who was the first ruler of the Ironborn, Garth Greenhand and Durin Godsgrief, among others. Not much is known about the Age of Heroes, which is shrouded in mystery and has become melded with myth and legend. What is significant, though, is that the Age of Heroes saw the establishment of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. Will Game of Thrones Season 8 be released ahead of 2019? During this era, small kingdoms rose and fell in a power struggle while traditions were formed such as the hospitality of the North and the protection of visitors, something which was grossly and tragically flouted at the Red Wedding. So it seems as if this prequel could have a flavor similar to that of Vikings or The Last Kingdom, both of which cover the formation of modern-day England. Martin is well known to be a history buff, and there are many parallels between real-life historical events and those that take place in Game of Thrones. For instance, the 7 Kingdoms is like that of the ones in early England, while the clash between the Lannisters and the Starks takes its cue from the War of the Roses. So, the Age of Heroes seems like a good place to start with the spin-offs. Only 2,000 years after the Age of Heroes started, the Long Night came when the White Walkers brought war on the world, which lasted an entire generation. Before the Age of Heroes was the Dawn Age, when the first men came to Westeros. Game of Thrones Season 8 will air in 2019.